Scott Woolweaver and Lynn Salmonsen are joining me in studio today. Well, partly in studio. We have Lynn sitting next to me and Scott via Zoom. We have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of music to talk about. And right from the start, welcome to you both. Great to have you in studio and remote.
Thank you.
Talk about, we'll get into a little history of you both as musicians and kind of paths that you've taken. But let's talk about how long the two of you on viola and, I should say on piano and viola, how long you two have performed together. And Lynn, maybe we'll start with you.
So right off the bat, I get to date myself, right? We met in grad school here in Boston at School of Fine Arts. We were assigned a chamber music class together, meaning it was Scott on viola, myself, and a clarinetist. And we were getting a few pieces ready, rehearsing and performing. Scott and I continued from that day, from that first year working together. And off and on, you know, sometimes our careers take slightly different directions and we don't get to play as much as other years, but it's been great. It's been a long time and it's been a lot of fun the whole time.
Now, Scott, I'm sure you'd say the same thing. Feelings are mutual, I assume.
One thing Lynn left out was when that was that we met. It was the early 1980s. I'm not afraid.
That was intentional, Lynn, was it not?
That's all right.
When you find someone that you enjoy playing with, you'll go to great lengths to keep playing. So yeah, it has been a labor of love for many decades.
You two play so well together. I was listening to a few bagatelles.
We've gotten that kind of comment a lot, that people say we seem to enjoy playing with each other. And it's true. We have played together. We enjoy playing together in any context, from a church service at Lynn's church to an assisted living center recital to a formal recital at a library or anywhere, really.
Talk about classical music and the appreciation of classical music. Obviously, as classical musicians, you really need to know how to read music.
Pianists and string players too, but pianists usually start pretty early, around age 6 or 7. And I was fascinated by a neighbor's piano in their basement. I went down and diddled at it every chance I got, and my mom signed me up for lessons with the piano teacher nearby, and I loved it from the start. Absolutely loved it. I loved the theory part. I liked practicing all the things that kids complain about, or adults, why they stopped learning. I just loved it, and I kept playing, knew that I wanted to do something with music for the rest of my life.
Well, how much, and we'll get to you, Scott, in just a moment, but Lynn, how much is it, do you feel, that music is in a person? The ability to learn an instrument is kind of already there, and that person may find it easier to follow instruction?
From teaching, I think that would be my greatest insight into that. And it's not necessarily a talent, because using my students as an example, they have all different talents. Some of them are fabulous sight readers. They read the music like they're reading a book, and that's innate. You either have that, you can get it somewhat, but you either have that or you don't. And I think it is closely aligned with enjoying to read a book, enjoying reading. You read music the same way. Some kids are fabulous memorizers, and they will spend weeks and weeks and weeks on a piece, but at the end, oof, do they know it. Some kids are great counters from the very beginning. You do need to have a level of detail in your personality, I think, to be a good musician, to play well, because it's very detailed. So there's that. And the love of music. whether that's considered a talent or just that love identifying with the sound that you're making or the sound that other musicians are making for classical music is important.
Scott, let's talk about your background, your instrument, which I understand is an older instrument, quite vintage.
Yes, my viola was made in Vienna in 1737. The string instruments themselves were developed probably in the mid 1500s, but it is a very old and very rare instrument. But I want to sort of add to what Lynn has been saying, in that there was a study done. I don't remember who did the study, but the result of the study was that most professional musicians have practiced their instrument 20,000 hours by the time they're 20 years old.
Wow.
And I did a little analysis, all the practicing I did as a kid and going to music camp, and that would include 2 years of college, where my teacher insisted that all of his students practice 5 hours every day. And I came up with a little bit over 20,000 hours of practicing. But as we develop as musicians, sort of our curiosity comes out. And I want to point out one thing that Lynn and I do is, when we play a recital, we like to make a nice mixture of familiar composers like Bach and Handel and Brahms, and composers that might not be familiar to everyone. You mentioned the bagatelles. You were talking about a composer named Gerald Finzi, who is an English musician, who not exactly a household name in the musical world, but we try to mix it up, and we're always looking for new pieces to make balanced, attractive programs.
When you're dealing in classical and chamber music, I think there's a certain expectancy that is there for the listener. Mm-hmm. When you think of, and that's true for all music, but when we're talking about classical music, there's a detail that you either have it right or you don't have it. And I say that because I think music, pop music and jazz, for example, you can slide. and that's not to denigrate the music, but I think with classical there's very specific notes, it's very specific in timing. That all has to be met. Would you agree with that? I guess I'll start with Lynn.
Yes. Classical music is written down, and you do your best to convey what the composer wrote. That being said, you're not going to add notes, hopefully. But you're going to convey what you think, how you feel, what the composer is trying to express. So musicality, if you will, which may be different than pop or jazz, because pop and jazz both evolve as you're playing many times in their performances, where we have an idea that we want to convey.
So I guess maybe when you're speaking about that, you're speaking of a warmthness or a coolness to the presentation of the piece?
It's more than that. It's taking you in. It's emotional in that we're conveying joy or sadness or melancholy or spirit or whatever. So it's up to us to convey that to you as the audience, or to the audience, and hope that they pick up on what exactly we feel the music is expressing. And in general, I mean, that doesn't deviate too far from performers. Some performers might be more exuberant or more exciting in the pieces they pick or the pieces they perform, where others might bring out another detail that they think the composer is trying to convey.
Scott, same question.
Yeah, I think it's important for an audience to just be able to relate to what they're observing and what they're hearing. sort of to say that it's not that important that you understand how the music is put together, but just that you have some kind of feeling about it. I like it. It's disturbing. It's pretty. It's calming. It makes me agitated. Just as long as you have some kind of feeling about it, you don't really have to understand how it's put together. That's the job of the performers.
Right.
And that's something that Lynn and I, and of course other musicians, we spend a lot of time talking about what is the composer trying to say here, and how do we say it in our unique way.
So let's go back, I guess, to the beginning and look at when you two started playing together back in the 80s, and I guess the way you present to an audience maybe hasn't changed over time that much. So how do you prepare your audiences for the program at any given time? And we'll start with you, Scott.
Well, we find out what the audience is. For example, if it's, a Valentine's Day concert, you want pretty romantic music. And if it's another holiday concert, of course, you tailor it. If it's a library concert, you don't want to play, squeaky wheel, contemporary music too much. You'll just tailor a program to an audience. So that's what we do. We tailor our programs to the audience to whom we're playing.
Lynn?
We do. We think of the audience first, and then pick out our music according to what we think they would like or what we want them to hear. Sometimes what we'd like them to learn about, or expose them to a composer that they may never have heard before. So, and it back to what Scott said earlier, it definitely is a combination of pieces that we like and we can't wait to play, pieces that we think the audience is going to perhaps recognize a couple times or not know at all, so they'll learn something new. But we like it to be a two-way street, so to speak.
A lot has been talked about involving the two of you, but let's talk about, Lynn, we'll start with you, other ensembles that you perform with.
I did both my undergraduate work and graduate work in accompanying and ensemble, which is today called a collaborative pianist, meaning you'll play for singers, you play for instrumentalists, you play in chamber music, you might play for a chorus, you might direct a choir. It equips you to do all that. And when I started school, my love was chamber music, definitely chamber music. But at the same time, I had a great deal of experience playing for choruses and choirs. And that has stayed with me. I loved doing that, and I've had a lot of different jobs through the years playing for groups, from high school groups to most recently South Shore Children's Chorus, which is a collection of kids this young up to college level, really, now. And that's a wonderful program, and gave me all kinds of opportunities, as well as the kids, to play a lot of different kinds of choral music.
The difference working with a child and working with an adult. Is it true that children, and maybe you can also chime in on this, that it's easier maybe for younger folks to grasp? Is it easier if you start, not to say that you couldn't start when you are an adult and suddenly decide, I want to learn
Right.
music, but is it easier just by nature when you're young?
It is easier because there's a bunch of things. Kids don't question why, and they don't judge themselves. They just absorb it. So in that respect, they learn easier because they're not putting up their own walls or whatever. On the other hand, adults might understand the concept quicker, but their bodies, fingers, are used to doing things a certain way, and piano, any instrument, is somewhat awkward, really, to get a good technical form for. So it is a little bit harder sometimes to teach technique to the adults, but and it's apples and oranges, but they're both delightful. They really are, and they complement each other.
Scott, I'll let you take a shot at this question as well.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. Both are equally gratifying in different ways. I can't say that one is easier than the other. As Lynn says, you just tell a youngster what to do, and they try to do it. And holding an instrument like this is not the most natural position for a human. And when you're teaching an adult, you can talk about adult things with adults. So in a way, it's a different kind of gratification. So I can't say one is more fun than the other. Just rewarding in different ways.
Understood. Talk about, Scott, your background, your associations. I know folks may remember you from attending the Boston Pops on the Esplanade, because you have played with the Boston Pops. So talk about, again, your musical associations through the years.
Sure. The viola is, without sounding trite, a very a versatile instrument, in that there are violas in an orchestra, there are violas in all kinds of chamber music, there's music written for solo viola. So we get a wide variety of music. And I am currently in the Boston Pops Esplanade Orchestra that plays on the Esplanade on the 4th of July, and that is the touring orchestra. So we've toured all over the world. We had a tour of Japan in this past October, for example. But like Lynn, my real love is chamber music. And I have an organization in Boston called the Chameleon Arts Ensemble, which is a large ensemble, has one of every instrument: flute, clarinet, viola, bassoon, couple pianists, a singer, 2 violins, viola, cello, double bass, harp, multiple percussionists, and we put programs together and present them at the First Church in the Back Bay 6 or 8 times a year. We do children's programs, and so that is a huge, wide array of different types of music. So that's sort of my love, the chamber music. And I have been in a couple string quartets, one that was based in California. I was in that for about 12 years. And I was in a piano quartet, which is violin, viola, cello, and piano. I was in that piano quartet for 25 years. I'm a member of a Alia 3. It's called a contemporary music ensemble, where they play, cutting edge music. And when it was established, it was music written after January 1st, 1900. So I've had a varied career, I should say, a very gratifying, varied career.
Again, a great conversation. Thanks to you both for joining me, I would say, both in the studio and remotely.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, you get to hear what you would experience at a concert performed by Lynn and Scott. We're, of course, talking about Scott Woolweaver and Lynn Salmonsen.
you.